All right, we're going to proceed forward then, Lee?
Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Connor Carr. We are going to go on the record in EFSB 2510, DPU 2575 at this time. Thank you for bearing with us. This is a hybrid public comment hearing of the Energy Facilities Siting Board, which I will refer to as the Siting Board or EFSB, and the Department of Public Utilities, which I will refer to as the Department. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 2, the Siting Board opened a rulemaking in EFSB 2510, and the Department opened a rulemaking in DPU 2575 to implement the siting permit and related provisions of the 2024 Climate Act.
Is that the correct
Chapter
input, or should it be audio in?
of the Acts of
Audio in,
2024.
Robin, instead of the-
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Jonathan, we can hear you pretty well. And so when you're talking, we can't really hear other folks. Is there, I'm not sure how you can fix that, but just wanted to note it.
Okay, Connor, try again.
Trying again.
Kessel, can you hear that?
Yes, continue talking.
Yes. Well, Connor, keep talking.
I'll be conducting this hybrid public comment hearing.
Yes.
Okay, so that
With me this evening are Stacy Rubin, Commissioner of the Department and EFSB member, Andrew Green, Director of the Siting Division, Veena Dharmaraj, I'm sorry, Veena, Director of the Department's Division of Public Participation, Joan Foster Evans, General Counsel of the Siting Board, and Wayne Wong, Assistant Director of the Siting Division. Representatives from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Massachusetts Office of the Environmental Justice and Equity, and the Department of Energy Resources are also in attendance. This hybrid public comment hearing is being live streamed and is being recorded for the Siting Board's YouTube channel. We also have a stenographer at this public comment hearing who will transcribe the official record of this hearing. If you are having any technical difficulties with Zoom, please use the chat function to contact ERG. Please pay attention to my video during the course of the public comment hearing and stop speaking if I raise my hand. I will do so if we have a technical issue or if I need to interrupt a speaker to ask them to slow down or speak up to ensure that we are capturing everything correctly for the record. On September 12th, 2025, the Siting Board issued a decision opening rulemaking. In its decision, the Siting Board proposed a number of changes to its regulations, which are at 980 CMR. These changes included revising 2 chapters of regulations, adding 4 new chapters, and repealing 5 chapters of regulations. The Siting Board will propose a 5th new chapter of regulations shortly regarding cumulative impact analysis and site suitability. Also on September 12th, 2025, the Department issued an order instituting rulemaking. In that order, the Department proposed regulations to implement the Intervenor Support Grant Program. The Department has proposed a new chapter, 220 CMR 3400, and will propose an additional new chapter soon regarding Siting Board application fees. We will be presenting the changes to the Siting Board regulations later in the evening. In the September 12th decision and order, the Siting Board and Department announced a series of hybrid public comment hearings across the Commonwealth. This is the first of those hearings. In addition, the Siting Board and Department provided notice that they would accept written comment on the regulations. Final written comments are due Friday, November 7th, 2025. Instructions on how to file comments are in the notice on the Siting Board and department's websites. After we complete these public comment hearings and review the comments, the Siting Board and department will adopt final regulations. The 2024 Climate Act requires that we complete our rulemakings by March 1st, 2026. The regulations will apply to projects filed with the Siting Board on July 1st, 2026, and afterwards. We note that the Department of Energy Resources is proposing regulations to implement the consolidated local permitting provisions of the Climate Act. In addition, the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and the Office of Environmental Justice and Equity at EEA are issuing guidance for certain provisions of the Climate Act. I would like to introduce Commissioner Stacy Rubin for the department, who will make some opening remarks. After the opening remarks, Siting Board and department staff will make a presentation on the regulatory changes. Commissioner Rubin?
Thank you, Presiding Officer Tar. Good evening. My name is Stacy Rubin, and I am a commissioner at the Department of Public Utilities and one of the current board members on the Siting Board. Just want to say it's wonderful to be in New Bedford, and this is a fantastic school building, so we appreciate the New Bedford community hosting us tonight. Thank you. We reached an important milestone tonight in the process to review and make improvements to our siting and permitting requirements in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we're excited to gather your feedback and improvements tonight. Many people in this room, both in person as well as virtually, have been working on siting issues for years and are eager to see improvements to the process, as am I. Let's move to the next slide, please. So let me take a moment to explain how we got to today's milestone. Governor Maura Healey signed Executive Order 620 in September of 2023, and she established the Commission on Energy Infrastructure Siting and Permitting. That Siting and Permitting Commission was tasked with reducing permitting timelines, ensuring that communities impacted by energy infrastructure have input on the siting of such infrastructure, and ensuring that the benefits of the clean energy transition are equitable. The Siting and Permitting Commission had members from labor, environmental justice, economic development, housing and real estate, labor, electric utilities, local government, agriculture, and the clean energy infrastructure present. That commission submitted recommendations to Governor Healey in March 2024, which informed the legislation that was enacted in November of 2024. The new law, which we affectionately refer to as the 2024 Climate Act, reduces the amount of time for permitting, and it does so through a consolidated permit process. It adds requirements for applicants to engage with local communities early and often, and should contribute to an equitable clean energy transition. One of the ways that the legislation directs more meaningful community and stakeholder engagement is through the creation at the Department of Public Utilities of a new intervener grant support program. We will touch on that only briefly tonight. Our next hearing on next Monday, November 3rd, will go into that program in more detail. With the consolidated permit process, we anticipate that there will be an increase in the number of clean energy projects that will seek consolidated permit approval in the coming years. The 2024 Climate Act directs the Siting Board to issue these consolidated permits, including state and local permits for clean energy infrastructure facilities. And you'll see on this slide we use the acronym CEIF or CEIF. Facilities that are small clean energy infrastructure facilities will typically seek a consolidated local permit. The Department of Energy Resources held information sessions and a public hearing a few weeks ago to obtain input relating to the clean energy infrastructure process for small clean energy infrastructure facilities. Let's move to the next slide. You'll see here that we have a fairly detailed timeline. And the point is that we've been working on a daily basis to implement the 2024 Climate Act. Tonight is a formal public comment hearing where we are recording, we're seeking your input, but this is one of several opportunities that people have had, and that's helped us shape the proposed language that we have out for public comment. Prior to tonight, staff from the Department of Public Utilities and from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and Office of Environmental Justice and Equity and Department of Energy Resources held 4 stakeholder sessions in the spring. We asked for comments on straw proposals that we put out at that time. We've also met with stakeholders in small groups since that time. Then the siting board met formally in July of this year, where those meetings were open to the public and we invited public comments and also responded to questions at that time. There was a subsequent meeting of the siting board voting to open this proceeding for the formal rulemaking process. So tonight is another opportunity for you to share your thoughts with us. And as Presiding Officer Tar mentioned, we are accepting written comments through November 7th. I want to also note that this is a fairly complex process with several different proceedings that are happening simultaneously. So we have the siting board docket, EFSB 25-10. There is a separate proceeding at the department focused on the intervenor grant support program, docketed as DPU 25-75. The department is also going to open a new rulemaking focused on siting board application fees that will open in the coming weeks. And then we have one additional set of regulations for the siting board focused on cumulative impact analysis regulations, and that will be issued as part of the 25-10 docket. I want to highlight that we did announce earlier today via email and posting on a website that we will hold a cumulative impact analysis webinar. That's going to be scheduled for November 6th at 2:00 p.m. in the afternoon. We will have interpretation and recording of that so that it's available for everybody if you can't make that date. So let me just focus on the next steps. So the siting board will reconvene to deliberate and vote on the final regulations for all except the cumulative impact analysis regulations in January of 2026. This will be yet another public comment opportunity, and I hope it's clear that we are making a real effort to provide multiple opportunities to get input and improve the documents that we have out today. The intervenor grant support program also will have final promulgated regulations before March 1st of 2026. The siting board is on a slightly different timeline for the cumulative impact analysis regulations. We aim to promulgate final cumulative impact analysis regulations in May of 2026, which will be effective in July of 2026. I'll also just note that there are currently 9 siting board members, which includes 6 government agency representatives and 3 public members representing environmental, energy, and labor interests. Starting in March of next year, there will be 11 siting board members, which will include 7 governmental agency representatives and 4 public members representing environmental justice or indigenous sovereignty, labor, municipal permitting, and municipal planning agency interests. Next slide, please. So we have received initial written comments on the proposed regulations that were due 2 weeks ago, and thank you so much for providing those. Those comments are posted on the various websites in the file rooms. Staff are reviewing and cataloging those comments as we speak, and we also are welcoming final written comments by November 7th. Information on how to submit those comments is here on the slide. Again, dpu.efiling@mass.gov and sitingboard.filing@mass.gov. Again, I just want to thank the team working on the siting and permitting improvements who have been working on this steadily for more than a year. My fellow siting board members and I are deeply grateful to the staff for your commitment to date. Getting public input has been absolutely essential. We look forward to your additional comments tonight and your written comments. Our work is better with your input. And I really just want to thank you for making time in your busy lives to be with us tonight. With that, I will turn it back over to Presiding Officer Tartan.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubin. Would staff like to begin their presentation regarding the regulatory changes?
Thank you, Presiding Officer Tarr. Again, my name is Andy Green. I'm the Director of the Siting Division of the EFSB, of the DPU rather, which is also the staff to the EFSB. So yes, we're on the right slide. So the slide that you're seeing now shows a table that differentiates between the area of clean energy infrastructure that the Siting Board, EFSB, is developing regulations to facilitate permitting. That's the large clean energy infrastructure facilities versus the small clean energy infrastructure facilities, which falls to the Department of Energy Resources in developing regulations that will be applied by municipal permitting authorities. So to just cover the basics here, large facilities, again, that EFSB covers are clean generation facilities, solar farms, wind, anaerobic digestion, which uses organic matter to generate electricity when those facilities are 25 megawatts and above. For energy storage facilities such as batteries, our siting threshold for EFSB is 100 megawatt hours. Again, I want to emphasize the hours, not megawatts. That has been the traditional generation threshold for the Siting Board prior to the new 2024 Climate Act. That was 100 megawatts for our prior generation jurisdictional threshold. Now it's 100 megawatt hours for the clean energy storage facilities. For transmission and distribution lines, our jurisdiction remains essentially what it has been for many years. If the facility is in a new corridor, is longer than a mile, and over 69 kilovolts, which is the power rating essentially of the line, that would be an EFSB jurisdictional facility. And if it's in an existing utility corridor, it would need to be over 115 kilovolts and above, and over 10 miles in length. So that's where our jurisdictional thresholds are established under the new Climate Act, and we continue to retain siting jurisdiction for traditional fossil type energy facilities, which could include power plants burning natural gas, or gas pipelines, or liquefied natural gas storage tanks that you see on the Southeast Expressway near Boston. Again, the Department of Energy Resources is developing a whole regulatory scheme for the smaller energy facilities. Next slide, please. So there's some important new features that were included in the Climate Act that we're working on right now as regulatory provisions that are now out in draft form, and we're looking for your comment and input. First of all, one of the most critical features is that the Siting Board now has mandatory deadlines, not recommended deadlines, but actual firm statutory deadlines that the large facilities that we review must be decided within 15 months of the point in time where an application is determined to be complete. I'll talk more about what that means later, but that's an important provision. And if that deadline is not met, there is constructive approval of the project proposal, which means that it would automatically be approved as a matter of the clock ticking 15 months for large facilities. The EFSB, and I should have mentioned this before, also has some responsibilities for smaller clean energy infrastructure facilities where the developers may opt in to EFSB reviews, where it's a transmission and distribution project, they can opt in, or if it's a small generation or energy storage facility, they can opt in for the Energy Siting Board issuing what we call a consolidated state permit. That would be all of the applicable state permits in one approval issued by the EFSB. That has a 12-month deadline because it's not a large facility, it's a small facility, and it carries that same constructive approval time provision that I mentioned. Other permitting agencies that normally have jurisdiction for issuing the whole slew of environmental, safety, health type permits for the variety of energy facilities I mentioned are very important and play a critical role in the process that we will develop going forward, even though they may not be the agencies who in the future will issue permits under their traditional authority. The role of state and local agencies is to provide recommended permit conditions in our process. So they review the application, they put forward the conditions that they think need to be established to protect their areas of statutory responsibility and authority, and the Siting Board will review those very closely and look to incorporate those provisions where, again, practical and consistent with the overall standards in the climate law as well as our regulations. So that is, again, a critical role that we see for the other state and local permitting agencies. I will leave it there and turn to my colleague, John Evans.
Good evening. Next slide, please. Thank you. Again, the EFSB, or the Siting Board, is the decision-making body that decides on permitting for these large facilities and sometimes for smaller facilities, as Director Green just said. The body, the decision-making body's composition is changing as of March 1st. Commissioner Rubin went through the changes of that, and the changes make the body larger and broadens the perspective of the board. In addition, the Climate Act also added new required considerations or a statutory mandate for the board. It also broadened the types of things the board must consider when the board decides on whether or not to permit a particular project. And we go through a couple of those requirements here. There's a new focus on the hierarchy of avoid, minimize, and mitigate of project impacts. It formalizes.
Students and staff, this is a friendly reminder that smoking and vaping is strictly prohibited on campus.
In addition, all exterior doors must remain closed at all times for everyone's safety and security.
Don't forget, the Lighthouse Cafe is open on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
We will not be vaping up here. Let me keep going here on the types of new mandates and considerations that the board must use when it makes a determination on a particular project. So it formalizes some long-standing policy considerations that we have already used in the past and makes it more formal, including labor, economic and environmental justice and equity, public health and safety. And this public health element is quite broadened in the new act for us to consider, and including the Department of Public Health will be joining our board. So that is a big change. We are required to consider the recommendations of local government and other state agencies to our permits. There are two new requirements that apply both to the new type of clean energy infrastructure facilities and our existing facilities, and that includes cumulative impact analysis for all projects considered by the board and pre-filing requirements that we'll discuss in a few moments. And we need to take into consideration climate change impacts. Most of these changes show up in the changes to the regulations at 980 CMR 1.0 and 2.0 to support the new changes of the board. Next slide, please. So this goes through the types of regulations that we're changing, adding, and deleting. And as I said, changes to 1.0 and 2.0 are basic rules on how the siting board works. And we've made significant changes to those, both to implement the act and to modernize a number of the requirements in those. We're adding 4 new sections, and one on consolidated permits, one on de novo adjudications, one on cumulative impacts and site suitability. That one is upcoming. That has not been issued yet. Pre-filing regulations and regulations on the constructive approval that happens if the board does not make its deadlines in its decisions. And then we're looking to delete 5 unused regulations, although when we proposed to delete all 5, we found out that one agency, Coastal Zone Management, actually uses one of our regulations that we thought was unused, so we will probably not be deleting that one, but we will propose that change when we propose our final regulations. And then there's the 2 new regulations for the Department of Public Utilities and the new regulations for DER. So I'm going to present just a very high-level overview of what the application process is. The application, again, for application for consolidated permit for generally a large clean energy infrastructure facility, but sometimes a small one. Again, the first box, the pre-filing engagement consultation, that is required for all facilities, whether they're new clean facilities or the old legacy facilities. We go into an adjudicatory phase. So the siting board's an adjudicatory agency, which means we use general rules of, we take evidence, we have parties, we provide notice, and our decisions are based on the evidence in a proceeding. It's a fairly formal proceeding, which we invite parties to join in. We get our application. We determine whether or not that application is complete, which is a very important step in the process. And then we go through the information or discovery phase of the proceeding. I like to say that our adjudicatory proceedings are in 3 parts. First part is notice and public comment hearings. Then we gather information through discovery and through hearings and get briefing. And then we go through a decision phase. And again, we are required now on these clean energy facilities to issue a decision for the large facilities in 15 months and the small facilities for 12 months. And if we do not issue those decisions in time, the permit will be deemed constructively approved, which I'll talk about more in a few minutes. I will now turn this program over to the new director of the Division of Public Participation to talk about pre-filing and consultation.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Applicants of clean energy infrastructure facilities that fall under the board's purview will be required to meet the pre-filing consultation and engagement requirements before they file their application with the board. The DPU's Division of Public Participation, or DPP, will oversee pre-filing requirements and will be available to assist applicants and stakeholders in navigating as well as clarifying the requirements during the pre-filing process. The pre-filing regulations specify the nature of project information applicants are required to share and with whom they need to share that information, as well as the efforts that they need to make to consider and integrate the input they receive from stakeholders. Pre-filing requirements support greater transparency and make project information available to stakeholders via multiple outreach channels. Pre-filing regulations also ensure that there's consistency in consultation and engagement practices across projects. The requirements expand opportunities for input by members of the community, as well as key stakeholders like project abutters, community groups, municipal officials, labor representatives, federal and state acknowledged and recognized tribes. Pre-filing requirements have two distinct parts to it. First, a consultation requirement that requires applicants to meet with the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act office, as well as other state, local, and regional permitting agencies that are relevant to their project. At these meetings, applicants will receive feedback on compliance with regulatory requirements, any studies or analysis that they need to carry out, as well as best practices to avoid or minimize impacts. Second, applicants are required to engage with relevant key stakeholders all through the pre-filing outreach period to inform, seek input, and be responsive to questions and feedback received on the proposed project. Applicants are also required to conduct at least 2 public meetings to get community input, create a project webpage that includes current information, and provide quarterly project updates via an email distribution list. The regulations establish robust pre-filing consultation and engagement requirements while providing applicants with flexibility in the timing and duration to meet those requirements. To keep DPP informed of progress, applicants are required to submit to DPP a self-attested pre-filing engagement status checklist approximately midway through their pre-filing period, and a pre-filing engagement completion checklist at the conclusion of their outreach efforts. These checklists are accompanied by supporting documentation with specific information on the agency consultation and community outreach efforts. The applicants can submit the pre-filing notice no less than 45 days and no more than 90 days before filing the application with the board. DPP will review that information submitted by applicants and any comments received from permitting agencies and incorporate that into the feedback that they send to the board as a part of DPP's opinion for the board's consideration. Next, please. I'm going to hand it over to Director Green.
Thank you, Ms. Damaraj. So I'm going to be talking now about the permit applications that are to be filed for the projects that seek EFSB consolidated permit approval. The EFSB has not had very many prescribed application forms to date. Most of the applications that we've received over the years have been developed through precedent, and we have very frequent filers, you might say, in terms of utility companies, consultants, and law firms that support them that are very familiar with the decisions and the reasoning of those decisions, and essentially know what needs to be included to satisfy the board's review criteria. It's now being formalized and structured in a way that will be much more explicit and frankly much clearer to applicants and other participants in our proceedings. So we've been working on developing applications that do a few different things. Because the consolidated permit generally includes all state and local permits that are needed, we're actually piggybacking onto existing permit application forms and process that have been developed by local agencies, local government. DOER is working on developing some of these consolidated applications as well. We'll incorporate that in our process. And we're also looking at other state agency application forms that over time have really perfected the collection of necessary information for wetlands permitting, air permits and all sorts of other, different issues that different state agencies deal with. I should also mention natural heritage, endangered species is another critical state agency that we will be working with and in collaboration with. So we have a draft of a consolidated permit application that we issued as a guidance document. It's out for public review. It's very extensive. It shows the type of information that we feel is necessary to have in an application so that the board, within 30 days of receiving the application, can hopefully make a determination on whether it's complete or not. If the application is complete, we continue onward and the clock starts towards those 12 and 15-month deadlines that I mentioned earlier that could trigger a constructive approval, which is something we hope does not happen. We certainly want to have affirmative decisions up or down by the board rather than an automatic approval as a matter of the elapse of time. So, but the completeness determination is what kicks off this time clock, if you will. So it's critical to have clear standards for how that will be evaluated, which again are reflected in our regs and guidance documents. We are still working on the application forms and the content that will be in them, but I will emphasize two things that the Climate Act required being incorporated in applications and overall guide the entire filing process and review. The Act requires that the Siting Board establish what are called baseline health, environmental, and safety standards. So these are the regulations, the provisions that projects need to be aware of, need to incorporate in their design and planning for their facilities. And we are working right now to put out a document that captures the essential, again, health, environmental, and safety standards. Usually these are shorthand references to other regulatory provisions that are already in effect, but there are some additional requirements that come into play. As far as the conditions, there's another requirement in the Act for the board to establish common conditions. So these would be conditions that are typically seen in various permits, state and local approvals, that would be used if we had the circumstance of a constructive approval. Since there would not be, again, a sort of proactive decision in a constructive approval, we still need to have conditions baked into what comes out of that process to ensure that the environment, public health, and safety are all protected. So again, that's a work in progress right now, and we do hope to be issuing that for public review and comment in the coming weeks.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. It's getting a little soft, so if you could speak up, that would be very appreciated.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hard to tell if I'm blowing people away or not. So thank you for the heads up on that. Can everybody hear me okay here in the auditorium? And Kessel, is it okay online?
Yes, this is much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Feel free to remind me of that. So that really is the sort of overview of the consolidated permit application. Again, take a look at the guidance documents that are out right now and the ones that will be produced shortly to get further information about that. This next slide, if we can go to the next slide, sort of encapsulates a lot of different things that are going on right now in the process that the EFSB is developing. So what we have in this complicated diagram is the development of, again, baseline environmental health and safety standards that I mentioned. Those are applicable to local permitting as well as state permitting. And those are being developed in collaboration with the Department of Energy Resources, which has a similar responsibility pertaining to the consolidated local permits that they are addressing. At the bottom of this graphic, we see that we have the common conditions, again, state and local. We have the application forms on the right of the diagram that feed into this process that originate either at DOER or could be local forms that may be used, as well as the ones that we're developing. And then all of this feeds into the application. We have two types of applications. We have an EFSB consolidated permit, which is all state and local permits that a facility needs to be approved for construction and operation. We also have a subset called a consolidated state permit. Only the state permits that would be needed, and presumably the local authorities are reviewing the local permitting issues under DOER's regulations. On the left side of the diagram, we show where all this information is going. We're developing, or will be shortly developing, a new electronic filing portal for applications and all other documents that transpire in our proceedings that will be quite visible to the public, easily searchable, well organized, and fit in well with the needs of local government. That's our objective, and we're working, again, in concert with the Department of Energy Resources to develop this system. Probably have some consulting assistance and software development help as well. There are application fees associated with the new permitting process. We have not issued that regulation or draft regulation yet, but there will be a new schedule of fees, and we are hoping that those fees can do three things. One is to support the need for staffing and resources at the siting division of the DPU, our group that you see some of us here representing. We also
我们现在这里
will
也
have
看到，
fees that relate to the
这里有一
intervenor
些
grant
的
support
或
program
者是
that
有一些
my
的那个
colleague
给一
Dina
些资金
Damaraj
辅助
was
的计划。
describing. And we
那
are
其中
also
有一
hoping to
天，
have
我们也希
funding
望
available
可以能够
to
提
help
供
support other
帮助
state
一些
agencies
其
who will no
他
longer be
州的一
receiving
些中介公
fees
司
because
不
they
能
will
够
not be the recipients of
运行的，我
applications
们可以帮
that the
助他
siting
们。
board issues.
我们也可
So
以
they
帮
still
他
have
就是做一些选
responsibilities,
址
they
的
still
计
have
划，
review and
我们可以
enforcement
帮他审
functions to
查，然后
maintain.
有回应。
And our hope
我
and
们的
intention is
希
that
望是能
a
够
portion of the
能
filing
够帮
fees
助
that
有
we
些部
receive
分
could
帮助
help
他们
them continue
升
their extremely
升起的那个
important
过程。
I think I jumped a little bit
我
ahead
想
of
我
Dina
跳得
on the
太远了。
intervenor grant support program. So
不过
now
我们
I'm
这里
going to
讲的
have
就是，
Dina explain what that really is
我
all
就解
about.
释我们到底整个过程应该怎么
Thank you,
申请的。
Director Green.
好，我们现在
Once an
讲的这个是
application is
这
filed
个
with the
中
board,
介这
or
个介入
you
的
know
这
somebody
个
files a
支持
petition with the
资金辅助
department,
的计划。
interested parties
我
can
们现
then
在
file
这
a
是
petition to
就是我们作
intervene
为一个
in
角
that
色，就是
proceeding.
帮助影响一
Interveners
些决
have
策
a
的过
formal
程，
role and
能够
greater
帮助就是提
involvement
供一
in
些资金性的
influencing decision making in a proceeding.
过程里面，可
They
以
can
帮助
present
提
evidence,
供一些的基金
cross-examine
去帮助有
witnesses,
些
and appeal
社
a
区的
final
群
decision.
体，还有一些符合资格
Intervening
的
and
个别，
participating in a proceeding
他们是不
is
能够
usually
参与
very
在这个
expensive,
DPU
and
或者
traditionally only
EFSB 的
those with
过
financial
程，因为
resources
他
and
们没有
technical
足够的
expertise
经费。
have been able to promote
那么我们
their
可以帮
interests
助他们
in
有
both
不同的
DPU
渠
as well
道、
as
不同的
EFSB
声音，
proceedings.
能够代表他
The
们的
Intervenor
福
Support
利，
Grant
代表他们
Program
的利
wants to
益、他们
change
的
that.
声音，
The
那就让
program will
一些
provide grants to
参
community
与者可
groups,
以得
small
到一些的资
municipalities,
金，
and
可
other
以帮
eligible
助能够
entities
雇
who
请
are unable
律
to
师或者
participate
专
in
业
a
的意
DPU
见，或
or
者
EFSB, that is
社
a
区
board
的一些的
proceeding,
专
due
业
to
意见，
financial hardship.
一些的行政的
It will
补助，
enable diverse
还有一些
voices
就
to
是
represent their
可以
interests
参与的一
and
些的
meaningfully participate.
一些费用的时候，我们
Grantees
可以
will
为
be
他
able
提
to
供一些资
cover
金的。
fees for
那这
attorneys,
些的条例
expert
细节
witnesses,
呢，就是要
community experts,
啊、
administrative
可以
costs,
辅
and
助
other
要得到
eligible
一定的
expenses.
要求。我们申
The
请的人
2024
哈，
Climate
我们要
Act
看他们申请的
authorizes
资
the
格。
Division of Public
那因为
Participation
我们
or
要
DPP
通过
to
一些的审
administer
批，
all
他
aspects
们要
of
申
the
请资
Intervenor
金辅
Support
助的
Grant
过程，
Program.
我们能够提
The
供最大
regulations
的
cover the
这个
eligibility
资金的
criteria
辅
to
助，
receive
也都
funding,
让他们可
the
以能
grant
够得到一
application
些的资
process,
金。
grant amounts,
我们会给他们
eligible
讲
use of
就说
funding,
他们需
and
要就
as well
是
as the
提
reporting
供他们的
requirements.
整
The
个计
hearing on
划
November
书，我们
3rd
知道他
at
们
the
要做
DPU
什么。
office is focused on the Intervenor
那
Support
这样子
Grant
我们可
Program.
以能够
We'll
去
have a more detailed
面试他们，
presentation
让他
about
们更
all
清楚的
aspects
给我
of
们
the
讲他们要
program at
做
that
什么，他们
hearing,
的计划，
and we look
还有
forward
他们的
to
目
your
的。
input on the program as well.
那我们可以把这些
Next,
都包
please.
括在那个计划里面。好，我们下一个简报。那这个
And
呢，
I'm
就
going
是
to
那
pass
个
it
建
over
议
to
性的
Ms.
那个
Evans.
通过哈。
Thank you. So a developer wants to propose a project.
所以，当
They've
一
done
个
their
发展商
pre-filing
要提供一个计划工
consultation
程，
engagement. They've gotten
那
their
我们必
information
须要
together.
就是要
They
首先就
file
是
the
看看他们所
application
提供的
under our
资料是什么。
application rules. The siting board deems it
我们就
complete.
是选址的那
It
个
goes through
委
the
员会，
adjudicatory process.
我们就是要看他
And
们所
for
提供
whatever
的资料，
reason, the time
他们需要就
element
是要
in the
申请，
statute runs
能不
out.
能
So
够
what
自动就是
happens?
批准他们
So
的那
we
个
have
合
put
并
together
的
some constructive
许可证
approval
的申请。
regulations
我们
to
需要就是
provide
有
a
一个
process
按照一个整个
to
过程有个时间
to
表
deal
时
with
段
that
来帮他
situation.
们审批
Hopefully
整个
we
过
don't
程。
need to use it very often, but we wanted to make sure it was
我们要
clear in the
确
event
定
that
就
a
是说他们所
constructive
提供
approval
的资
happened.
料，所有
Again,
东
a
西都是
constructive
符合我们的
approval
要
is
求。
the project would be deemed approved.
就
at the
是
end
我
of
们
the
要帮助
timeframe.
他们，就是知道整个过
And
程怎么
so
弄的时候，
the
给他们
this
知道怎么
this
递交这
this
些的资料，
mechanism was
可以
added
帮
by
助
the
他们得到
legislature
批准。
to ensure that
我
the
们要
final
肯定
decisions on
最后
these
的
clean
决策
energy infrastructure
就
projects
是根据
are
他
done
们
in a
要提
timely
供、要
manner.
建造
You
这
might
些
well
的那
note
个
that
干
constructive
净能
approval
源的
does
那
not
个基建
apply
的
to the
工程，
existing legacy
是合乎我
facilities
们
that
的
are
要求的，
non-clean.
而且是合乎我们的时间段的申
So
请
the
的时
new
间段。
regulations provide a process
所以他
for
们
the
必须
event
要
of a
就是提
constructive
供一
approval
个
and will involve the
草议
presiding
给我们
officer in a
看，知
clear
道他们整
manner.
个过程
The
里面知
presiding
道要怎
officer
么申请。
evaluates the proceeding to
那我
figure
们
out
会
whether or
评估
not
他们的
the
申请。
the
那一般就是12到12个
whether or
月
not the
的这个
proceeding will
15个月
complete in
，12到
the
15个
required
月的这个
time,
时间段。
issues a notice of likelihood of constructive approval if the
我
presiding
们需要
officer
就是给他们
determines
知道
that
大
it's
致上
not
我们会怎么
likely
样
that
会
the
通
decision is
过。
going to be made
好，
in
整
the
个过程让
appropriate
他们知道我们
statutory
的要
timeframe
求，他们
and
大
will
家
provide
他
a
们所
draft
做的是不是能得
constructive
到就是
approval
共同的
permit,
一个情
which
况，
will
大家
include
都
the
是能够
common conditions that
都是
Director
能够
Green
共
talked about.
达到共识的，
And then the
都是
constructive
根
approval
据就
is
是
the
他的
constructive
那种要
approval
要基
permit
建要
is
做
deemed
的一些
issued
的
on the
类型，
deadline,
还
and
有
then
体积要
afterwards
多
the kind
大
of the，
还有
paperwork
就
will
是整个
follow and
过
will
程
follow
呢，
within a
要
few
我们
days for
要
the
就
presiding
是
officer
提供
the
思
actual
考，就是
permit
说
with the
要补
conditions
助或者
attached to
是
the
有
attached to
特
the
别的
project.
他们的工程的一些的情况要怎么用做。
Next slide, please.
好，下一个简报。那这个就决
Another
策的过程
element
哈，我们
of
就
the
主要
new
讲到
regulations
两个
is something called
可
de
能的
novo adjudication.
过程，是
And
帮
this
助他们
is an
通过这
adjudication
个
up
合并
at the
的
siting
许可
board,
证。
but a decision
我们需要
issued
就
by
是
the
那个
director
申
of
请
the
者或
siting
者其
board.
他的
And
人
there's two
能够就
pathways
是
for
很确认
the de
性的、
novo
很
adjudication to
仔
come
细
to
的
the
哈
board. And these are both
对于我们这些
adjudications of
我们
consolidated local permits. So there's a
对
path
必
for
须
the
要得到
local
我们
permit to
本地
come up
政
to the
府的
board.
认可，就是通过
First,
也达到我
it
们的
may
要
be a
求。
request
那
from
一
an
般来
applicant
讲，
or
是我们
another
本地
person
政府
that's
的那个
that's
通过审
affected
批
by the
要
proceeding,
6个月的
affected
时
by
间
the
段。
local government decision, and does not basically does not
如
like
果
the
就
local
是说
government
他本地政府哈
decision,
缺
it
乏
moves
一
the
些资
petition
源
up to the board.
去在整个过程能够
Secondly,
帮
there
助
can be
这
a
个
request
要
from a
申
local
请表的
government
话，
that the
那
local
大部
government
分我们
will
可以给他
send
12个月的时间。
consolidated local permit application and
对，
does
在
not
这
have the
本地的
resources
要
to
求他们的
complete the
申请
review
表
of that
哈。那
permit
最
in
后
12
的时
months,
候
and they can
啊
also send that up.
决策的会是
Again, the
EFSB 的
final
那个
decision is by the EFSB
指导
director.
者，他们来就
Next
是
slide.
做最后的决策。那然后
And
就
this is
是
a little diagram of
就
kind
是
of
给我
how
们
that
看一个图
happens.
表，怎
Two
么
different
去就
paths get
是
up
帮
to
他
the
们去
director
决
of
策
the
整个
siting
过程，
board.
决定批不
In the
批准。
first box talks about
那第一
the
个就讲到
a local government actually
本地
makes
政府呢
completes its
要
review and makes a decision,
完成一个
and
审批的
and
过程，
one of the
就是
parties to the
批不
decision
批准
does
他
not
们这
like
个
the
合并
decision,
的
wants the
本地的这
wants the
个
EFSB
许可证
director
的
to
申
review
请。
that decision.
然后
That
就
would
是
be
最
a
后他们要达
6-month
成最后的
proceeding
共识。
sending up to the
那然后我们
siting board
要求就
director. The second box
EFSB 的
Second
审
way to
批
get to the director
会议哈，就
is that
是
a local government does
批准，
not
就是说
have,
看看他们
the
审议
resources
整
to
个
go
他们
ahead
就是
and
申请者
process
或者
a
个别
local
人他们的
consolidated
是不
permit
是能够得到
application
这个本地
and
政
sends
府的
that
最后的
full
决定的。
application up to the siting board
然后我们
director,
最后
in
有
which
一个
case
完
the
全的
siting
一个
board
审
director
批的
would
过
run
程，
a full proceeding on that application
然
and
后我们
issue
就
a
是
decision in
看它的
12
细
months.
节，看它所递交的
And
申
the
请
standard
能
that
够
we
符不符
use
合
for
我
this,
们的
the
要求，
standard that the siting board would look at
然后
to,
整个
when
标
we
准的
review
那
these
个
types of proceedings would
委
be
员会
whether or
会真的
not
看它
the
整个申
decision
请的
of the
内容，
local
然后看
government
看
was
达不达
consistent
标，
with the
然后最后
local
我们会决策，
consolidated
就是说
permit application
这个申
regulations that
请，或者
DOER
是
is
这个
promulgating,
达不达到
and
我们的
also
那
whether or
个
not
条例规
the local
则，
government's decision is
我们
consistent with
本地政
the
府就会
siting
真的
board's
是最后
overall
决定，
statutory
有
mandate.
根据那个时间段最后决定了他的那个决策怎么样。好，下一次，这个就是累积性的
I'll
那
pass
个
it on to Director Gould.
影响的分析。累积性的影
Okay,
响
we'll be
呢？
turning now to cumulative impact analysis. This was
好，我们现在就
mentioned
讲了累
earlier
积
by
性的影
Commissioner
响的
Rubin
分析，
as one of the items that we're
这是我们其中一
continuing
个
to
要
work on, have not
要
released the
一直在
draft
工作当中的，要
regulation yet.
提
We
供
are
一些草
working
议。
on that, and we
我们
do
还
have a
在商
webinar
讨当
scheduled for
中，
next
我
week
们
on
会有一
November
个
6th
网络
2 in
的
the afternoon, where
商
the
讨会哈，
details
下一
of
次我
the
们会
forthcoming
预约看
regulation will
讲
be
这个
shared.
细节的。
Draft regulation, I should say.
那我们会谈到一
So,
些草议的那
cumulative
些的
impacts,
条
what
例，
are they?
那这是
This is
什
a
么呢？
requirement in the
就是
statute that
要
any
求，
facility that
就
the
是对于一些
EFSB
人想
reviews,
要真
whether
的
it's
是做一
clean
些
or
的
a legacy
工程，
fossil
我们
facility
要提供一些
now
更
must
细节的
have
那
a
个条例。
cumulative impact analysis
那这些就
performed
是他
by
们
the
所要做
applicant
的，会
and
提供一
reviewed by
些
the
的
siting
影
board
响
as
分
part of
析。
the overall charge in
这是
reviewing these
整
projects.
个，就是我们
A
评估的时
cumulative
候，就是
impact, it
从
may
不同的
seem
方面。
obvious what that is, but it's
那到底这是
essentially
什
the
么呢？
combined effects
我们会
not
把这些
only
所有
of the
的
project
看到
itself,
他
but
们这些
also
影
what
响会
preceded
总
it
合起来一
in
起看。
terms of past
我们
private
会对于就
activities,
是
industrial,
个人的
commercial,
工业
state
的
or
商
municipal
业的州
operations
政
and
府的，或
development
者是一些
activities
他们的
that
这
have
些
had
的
an
提
impact
供要
on the
做的一些的
environment,
计划
on public health,
在
and also have had an
执行
effect
的时
on
候
how
发展的
climate
时候，还有可以
is
对于
affecting
其
the
他的
environment when projects are
经
being
济个
proposed.
体，
So
而
this
且
could
就
be
是
flooding,
能够对不对，就
storm
是说
surge,
对环境、
it could
对
be
公共
heat islands that occur
健
with
康，还有是不
areas
是
of
能够看到
pavement
这
or
些
heat
的影
effluent
响
in
会
projects.
对
So we're
那
looking at
个
all of
气
that,
候影
both
响
from the project as well as what has preceded it.
但是
That's
这
a
些
cumulative
就是
impact.
进一步做的时候，会对有 整个社群
The
有什么的
concepts
影
that I'm
响？
talking about are
那我们
based on
讲
guidance
到的
that
那
has been
个概
developed
念呢，
by the Office of Environmental Justice and
所以
Equity
我们要
at
需
the
要就是
Executive
那些
Office of
环
Energy
境
and
这些
Environmental Affairs.
保护的他们的这个
That
群
that
体
document is
去
really the
评估他们最
foundation
后
for
指
the
出来的会
regulation
有
that
什么
we've
影
been
响。
developing, and we've worked very closely with
我们会有那些
OEJE,
好
as
像
the acronym
OEJE 这
goes,
些的机构
and
哈，一起
their
发展，然后
guidance
一
as
起去
well as
评
our
估。
regulations will be forthcoming.
那我们会有一些更多的条
So
例、指标，然后让他们更清
a
楚
key
我们
concept
怎
of
么看。
the cumulative impact analysis
这个
is
其
to
实会
look,
我们怎么分
this is
析
in the statute,
个别
at
性的很多的
what are
细
the
节，
areas in the Commonwealth
好
that
像
have
有这些的
heavy
范
enough
围有什么呢？
burden where these cumulative impacts really
我们
matter
就是真的
and
是
should
看
be
到就是
deemed
说
a
它
very
会影响
significant
到
factor in how the board evaluates projects.
我们就是给就
We're
是
using the
我们委
concept
员
of
会
what
怎
we
么
call a
去
burdened
评估这
area
些的
that would
这些
be
工程。
essentially defined at a census block
我们
level.
会
A
有
census
审
block,
批，
think
就
of
是
it as
这
a
些小组会
neighborhood,
审批他们所做
roughly
的。
1,000 to 3,000
一般
residents
是
live in
3000到
US
6000
census
的
block
那个社
groups,
区
as they're
社
called
区
by
的影响。
US Department of
我们
Commerce,
会
I
有就
believe,
是
that
不同的
that
部
is
门哈，
responsible
会
for
评估
the census process.
哈整个评估的
So
过
the
程哈，
burdened area would have indicators or
我们
data
会有一些
and
指标
measurements that show
量
high degree of
度
impact
量
from
度就是
prior
测量他们所
industrial
做的影
activity,
响，
transportation uses,
或
or
者
other
是对
development
那个
activities that
交
show up
通，或
in
者是
environmental
公众
degradation
健
or
康
adverse
环
public health
境，或者
measurements.
是社
So
区
we
经
have a
济的发
statistical
展。
basis to define,
我
what
们
will
就是根据
constitute
这些
a
的
quote
数据
burdened
去
area and focus our
决
review on
定或者
cumulative
是
impact
定义，
analysis
或者是我们的
on
所
those
注
particular
重的是
areas.
什么。
So that will
这
be
个就是
seen
可以
in the
帮助我们
forthcoming
可以看到
regulations.
更好的这些的条例应该怎么定，去接受他们的计划。
Picking up on the pre-filing process,
然后另外
I
就
should
讲
note
就是
that
说，我们
during
之前会要他
pre-filing,
们一早
applicants
就
will
先
share the
预先
result of
递交
these
他们要做的
statistical
工程的那个
analyses,
计划，
again, conditioned
先 首轮给我们看一看，大致上他们是又做什么，会对就是那些共同利益享受者，我们大家都会去参与，去看一看到底那些一早递交的这些的这些的活动哈，他们的申请会对我们有什么影响？好，下一个简报。那然后就是这个，我们也会就是相连到的一个思考的环境哈，就是说我们要选一个地方给他们去做这些的工程。 那我们也要评估。那这会最重要就是看会不会影响到我们的环境，就是要看从不同的条件来看评估，就是看这些的工程。有不同的，就是根据我们的那个要求，好像是会不会影响我们的环境，或者是那个气候，或者如果我们给那个做这个工程的时候，那个选的那个地方会不会影响到就是环境环保啊，或者是一些动物啊，或者是有那个农业工业或者社会环境就造成很大的负担或者影响的。或者会不会影响到现在我们的农业的要求或者资源，会影响到他们的发展，或者是有社区服务的，或者是我们有些环境上的一些的影响。我们有一些很仔细的条例根据来选址。那申请者呢，估计就是要有一个分数来评分，就是说他们在之前所递交的一些的申请里面，我们给他有评分的制度，然后给所有的那个利益共享者，我们大家在这个社区里面一起都去看，给他们足够的时间去调整或者改变，就是有些不符合或者是不达标的一些的指数，我们可以帮他调整或者评论，有些意见提交的，我们都可以进行修改。那就是不想要影响到大家的在这里共同的利益大家一起在这个社群一起做的话，会影响到其他的工业、商业或者农业的资源，所以我们都需要从这些里面去审批，然后决策怎么去合并这些的许可证可不可以批准。我们也会要看，就是说他们评分，就是如果有些分数比较高的，会不会影响到很多的环境？所以我们整个过程会有很多的审批，然后决策的过程。所以我们会主要分析就是那些影响的，就是很大的影响的那些的分析。那种没有，我们并没有说一定要他们要这样做批准。我们就是一定要要不然就是做全面性的评估。这个才是对我们整个社区有最大的那个利益最好的分析。所以我们会有很多公开的时间给大家去评论，去有提供意见。对于这些公共的工程，我们同不同意？好，我们给那个Tar 来继续下面的分析。好，我们现在有一个小小的时间现在是7:40，我们有一个小小的休息的时间，然后听一听大家的那个评论
Welcome back. We'll go back on the record in EFSB 2510, DPU 2575.
我们重新再开始哈，现在
We will
又
now take questions and comments
我们
from
现
the
在会
public.
有
The
发问
purpose
的
of
时
this
间，
public comment hearing
我们
is
这个
to
目
hear
的
comment
是
on the proposed
能够听到大
regulatory
众的声
changes
音，
to
能
implement
够
the
把我们
2024
想要做的
Climate
是
Act.
提供一些
We ask that you focus your
改，
comments on
我
these
们希望
regulations. We will
能够
not be
按照
taking
我们提
comment
供的条
on
例
particular
来
projects,
调整，
including
能够
those
把
projects that are currently
回
under
答的
review
问题能
by
够
the
真的给
citing
大
board
众更明
or
白。
department. We begin with
我
federal,
们
state,
开
and
始
local officials
从
appointed as well as elected officials
州政府，
who
然
wish to
后
be
州
heard.
然后
Then we will proceed with the
本地
members of the
政府
public who have
然后
signed
我
up
们
to
再
speak
看到有
in the
再
order in which
给
they
一
have
些
signed
那
up.
些公众
Finally, we
人
will
哈，或
allow
者是
anyone who
一早
wishes
已
to
经
speak
提
but did
交
not
说
have
要
the chance
回
to
答
let us
要
know in
问问题的
advance.
人，
If you are participating
我们
remotely
真
and
的
I
希
call
望
upon
大
you
家
to
可
speak,
以
we will move
都
you
可以
into
参
the
与。
Zoom panel
如果你想要
so
问
you
题，我
can
们
be
可以把
seen
你放
and
到那
heard by the
个
Zoom audience as well as those here in
那
the
个想问的
auditorium.
那个
For all
房间
speakers,
里面
please
哈。
give your name,
所以
spell
请
your
你
name,
先
and
讲你
speak
的名
slowly
字，
and clearly.
慢慢的讲，然
Do
后
we
清
have
楚
any
的
federal
讲发
officials
问。
present or
我
on
们有
Zoom
没有
who
任
wish to
何的州
comment?
政府的员工在这里呢？
Please raise your hand on
请你
Zoom
举你的
if you are
手。
present.
如果你在这里的话，请你举手哈，有问题。
Moving on, do we have any state officials present
有
or
没
on
有州
Zoom who wish to
本州
comment?
政府的、
Please raise your hand either in person or on
联邦
Zoom.
政府的有没有？然后州政府的有没有？
Seeing
如
and
果有，
hearing no
请你举
response.
手。
Next, we'll.
下一个我们会
Are there any local officials
有
present
没有
or on
本地
Zoom
的
who wish to comment?
职员、州政府的
Please
职
raise your
员、
hand
市
if
政
you're
府
in
的
person
人？
or on Zoom.
如果你有的话，请
We're
你
going to
举
take
举手
the，individual
无论
in
在
the
现
room
场或者
first.
在网络上
Sir,
的。
please come up to the microphone,
请你
state and
找，
spell your
如果
name.
现场的话，请你走到
and
那
we look forward
个
to hearing your
麦克
comments.
风那边来讲，先讲你的名字哈，先讲你是
Good
谁
evening. My name is
大家好，
Jeffrey,
我的名字叫 Jeffrey
Jeffrey Carvalho. That's
Jeffrey Cavallo， 我的名字
Valho.
好，
From
我的
Town
拼
of
法，
Dighton on the planning board.
我是那个计划
Town
委
of
员会，
Dighton. I apologize. DIGH.
好，那个地区的，我是从那个地区过来哈，
Yes, sir.
好，大家好，
Okay. I'm from southeastern Mass. There's only so much I can do there. All right. So, question about
我有
the
问题，
documents that you're
关
talking
于那
about
些
this
文件，
evening, specifically on the slide where you mentioned
你有一个简报提到
225 CMR
20
29. You said that
25
was forthcoming. I
对，
did
就
find
是
it
说那
online,
个
so I'm a little confused.
我
why
只
it's
是有点
forthcoming. Is it
不太
just
清楚，
hasn't been an official draft release?
这个之前的那个提议那个草案是不是已经被正式公布，已经正式接受
You
了
are correct.
之
The
前那个
DOER
提到，
regulations have been
对，你是讲的
issued
对的，
for
已
review
经被提
and
出
they have
来，
been
而且
posted.
也
So that
被
is
审
correct.
批
That was an
过。
oversight on our part because when we had originally drafted
对我们
this,
这个是一个草案草
Okay, so
议，
these
所
are
以
still
当初
draft.
没
These are
有，
not
这些是草案
official
草
yet,
议，还没有
correct?
正式被通
no,
过，完
nothing has
全被
been
批准。
promulgated and signed into law. This
对，
was
这里
still
还没有
signed
完
into
全放到那个
regulations
条
as
例
of
里面
now.
或者
We're
律
asking
法
for
里面。
comments for additional editing
我们还
at
是
this
等
time.
着大家
Yeah,
的
so
意见，
comments
大家
specifically
公
to this
众的
document, is
提
that
出
to
的
this
问
board or to
题
the，DOER?
所以这个还是就是草
So
案草
comments
议。
regarding 220 CMR
所以
29
关于
would
那
go
个
to DOER who are
2025
having
那
their
个
own
CR
public
那
comment
个
hearings.
225. Okay, I'll do that.
那个
Thank you.
225的那个哈，那个是
The
一个
last
草
one.
案。
Yep.
225, my apologies.
225是225
Okay,
哈，我
just
们讲的
ours.
是，
So I will direct all questions.
我会把我的问题，
We're going to go with 225
我
CMR
225
29,
CMR
which is the
29
DOER new regulations
是一个
regarding a
新的条例，
consolidated local permit.
关于就是
So
那个
you're not
合并
taking
的
any
许可
questions or
证的
comments on
申
that
请。
document this evening. That's for
好，
DOER.
我只想知道这个到底是已
That'll
经
be a
正式被
DOER
批准。
public comment hearing. They will have their own.
对，
you.
到时候我们会有
They
那
had
个下一轮的那个公
I
众
want to give
诉
you
听
some
会哈
complete。information. They had previously already held their public
他们
comment
之前
hearing,
已
so
经
that has
是有
actually already
提
happened.
过这个，有讨论过的，其实有。
Are there any other local officials here in the audience who would like to
有没有
provide
其他
comment?
本地的一些的职
Are there
员、
any
市
additional
政府来
local
的？
officials on Zoom who would like to
有
provide
没有在
comment
网上的市政府
on
的
any of the
员
regulations
工？
at this time?
有没有关于有些什么问题，关于条例有什么问题的？
Please raise your hand and we'll move
请
you
你
to the
举起
panel.
手。
And Zoom attendees, you can raise your hand by clicking on
如
the
果在
raise
那
hand
个网
icon
上的，
that
你
looks
也
like a
可以
little hand.
举起手哈。
And if you are on your phone, if you
如
hit
果你是用
star
手
9, that will
有
raise
手
your
机
hand.
来进入的话，你可以按星9就可以进入，可以提问。
Next, we will take comments from members of the general public, beginning
然
with
后我们
those who
就
have
从
pre-registered in the order in which they
公众那边
registered.
的
When
讨论
called,
哈，
please give your
评论，
name and spell your
请
last
给我
name.
们讲你的名字还有你的姓怎么拼哈。
We have someone who had signed up, Carolyn Healy. Are you
我们有一
here
个人
or
叫
on
Carolyn
Zoom
Healy 哈，
at this time?
在那个网上的。
Again, Carolyn Healy.
Carolyn Healy 哈，她刚才有提问的，在网上的，
Doesn't appear that Carolyn has joined us tonight.
她好像没有
Is
在
there
这里。
anyone here in the audience who would like to provide comments
有
regarding
没有
the
人在现
regulations
场的
as they
想
stand?
提出一些评论意见的？
Go in any order.
任
I'll
何
have,
次序
I'll
都
have
可
you
以哈，
step
没
up to the
关系。
microphone.
你
Please
可以
state and
走
spell
到
your
上
first and
面
last name.
来讲话吗？在
Thank
麦
you.
克风，
Catherine
请讲你的名
Harrelson.
字。
Catherine.
我叫 Catherine。
Catherine. Harrelson. Harrelson.
Catherine Harrison， 我的名字叫。
I live in Plymouth, and I
我在
work for
Plymouth
an
住。
organization called Community Land and Water Coalition.
我们那边有一个叫社区的水
Thank you
还
for the
有
opportunity
土
to
地的一
comment
个
tonight.
和
Excuse
的
me
一
if
个
my
组
comments are
织
a。little bit disorganized.
对
There have
不起
been a
哈
lot of public hearings and a lot of proposed
我知道整个过程
regulations
可能
this
有
fall.
些没有很协调，因为
So,
很多人哈。
I did get a chance to read
但
some
是
of the
我有
proposed
看过一些
980
资料。
and 980 this morning.
今天
However,
早上
some of my comments will be more general in nature in regard to
我的
the
评论
proposed
是比
rulemaking
较
under the new climate
大
law.
众化的，
Some background information for the
就是一
comments
些
which I'm
背
about to provide.
背景资料。
A key report was issued by the United Nations on the status of their sustainable
我
development
知道
goals.
之前有一个很
The
重要的
byline
报
of the
告，就
report
是
was
美国政
current
府
global
出的，
response insufficient.
就是说讲到
Transformative
责
changes
任，
are
还有就
needed
是
to
没有
restore
效
and
益，
protect nature.
所以我们希望能够
Opposition from
保
vested
护就
interests
是
can be
天然
overcome
哈
for
环
public
境，
good. Some key findings of the report.
就是我们有些对于这个报告的一些的
75%
找
of our
到的
terrestrial
看
environment
见，
has been severely altered to date
但是我
by
知道
human
有些的
actions. There's been a
工程也很
47%
大的
reduction
调整。
in global indicators of
我们知道
ecosystem
就是整
extent
个世
and
界的
condition against
指
their
标来
estimated
看，
natural baselines.
就是我们没有真
Over
的看到
85%
就
of
是
wetlands present
环
in the
境的
1700s have
骚
been
扰或
lost
者
by the year
顾虑到
2000.
环境的那个保护。
Tens to hundreds of times is the
我们
extent
可能也
to
会
which
真的
the
很大
current
的
rate of
影响
global
到
species extinction
一
is
些的
calculated
动物一些
compared to
濒
an
临
average
绝
over
种
the
的
last
动
10
物，
million years.
我们就是
Up
很
to
多
1
的
million
时间没
species
有
are
真的
threatened
是
with
帮助，
extinction, many
他
within
们
the
很
next
多可能
several
要
decades.
绝种了，濒临绝
Over
种，
500,000 or
有
9%
50
show
万
the
或
world's
者是
estimated
90%
5.9
的，
million terrestrial species
都
with
是有很多
insufficient
有
have
100
insufficient
万的那
habitat
种，
for
我们要
long-term
就是
survival.
去
According to
救
several
生
studies by the
救
state of
他们或者
Massachusetts,
濒临绝种的
habitat
动物。
loss is the number one cause of loss of biodiversity.
那我们知道有很多这种的，我们
According
对
to
于
the
这种
Office of Energy
能
and
源公
Environmental
司的
Affairs,
计划
we are in a
扩张
biodiversity
或者
crisis
是
in
建
Massachusetts.
基建的工程，就是影响到这些
Particularly
动
to
物的最
southeastern
大的原因。
Massachusetts,
那根
particularly
据
the
这个
communities
麻
of
省的
Plymouth
这个
and
州
Barnstable,
的那
we
个
live in
条
a
例，
globally rare ecosystem.
我
The
们其
pine
实住
barrens
在
of
一个就
southeastern
是整个
Massachusetts,
社
found
会
in only 3 places
生态
in the
平衡的
world.
一个
I've
一个
been
环境
fortunate
里
enough to
面。
live in 2 of them, southeastern Massachusetts, where I grew up,
那
and
我们
southern
知
New
道，就是
Jersey.
好像我在这
This
里
is a
成长的
globally rare
州里
ecosystem
面
which，depends on our delicate natural sandy soils to
但是
thrive.
我们真的是要平衡
In
这
the
个
town of
生态
Plymouth
的
in
话，
which
我
I
们就
live,
是
we
要
rely upon
知
a
道
sole
整个
sourced
生态里面有
aquifer
不
for
同
our
的
drinking
生态
water.
在发展，
This
在共
aquifer
存。
serves over 200,000 people
但
in
是我
Commonwealth
看到有
Massachusetts and 7
20万 多万的这
including
个
Plymouth,
生物
Williams,
哈，
The interpreter just requesting that you slow down while you're reading so I can follow you clearly, please.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
This aquifer serves over 200,000 people
有
Commonwealth,
20万的人
including 7
在
communities,
不同的
Plymouth,
社区里面，
Wareham, Carver, and
有不
parts of
同的
Kingston,
职
Duxbury,
业的人，
Plimpton, and Bourne.
不同的社区里面哈。
Yet, despite our
但是
biodiversity
虽然
and
我
our
们
delicate natural environment,
我们真的
southeastern
是知道我们的
Massachusetts
生
is
态
being
有
targeted
很
for
受到很大
renewable
影
energy
响，
projects
但
due
是我们
to
还是
our
一直在
large
推这些
expanses
能
of
源的发
undeveloped
展。
land, which have been relatively untouched by latter-day agricultural projects.
但是
And the fact that
有
we
一些
have
地
some
方我们
very
其实也
large
没有真
private
的
landowners
提供到
down
就
here
是
in
农业的
southeastern
需
Mass.
求。
According to the report,
根据那
wind
个
and
报
solar,
告，
protecting nature
我
by
们要
Mass
保
Audubon
护
and
这环
Harvard
境，
Forest,
还有
southeastern
这些的不同的
Massachusetts
农
is
业
one of the
的资源，
hotspots for
还
renewable
不
energy
同的，
development.
我们需要真的是重新再评估哈，
My
看到
comments
他们这是
particular
不
to
断
the
在发展。
regulations will focus on cumulative impacts,
我们要
site
真的是要看到
suitability,
有
and
这些
community
不断的工程发展会累积
In
越来越
regard
多
to
的
the
影响对我们的环
cumulative
境，
impacts, I implore you to also
所
include
以我希望你们真的
small
看到这些越来
renewable
越
energy
多的
projects in the
影响。
cumulative impacts analysis.
其实他们
The
在
town
整
of
个过程
Wareham,
评估的过程，
Massachusetts
我们有没有
has
真的是
over
看到这些的
19
影响？
ground-mounted solar projects,
我们
resulting
知
in
道
the
之前
loss
就已经有
of over
19个不同的那种
200
太阳
acres
能的
of locally
工程
rare
发展，
pine barrens forest. And
其
yet,
实越来
each
越
one of
多
these
影响到
projects
环
is
境。
10 to 40 acres in
我们知
size
道有
and
最
would
起
not
码
be
10到
included in the
40亩
cumulative
地
impacts
不断在批给
analysis.
他们。
Site suitability.
我们也看到就是不同的选
On
址
your
的那个
slide
适
that said
合的
site
地
suitability
区，
assessments, you
我们在
state
真的是评估这些
applicants
合
estimate
符
scores
啊
during pre-filing
合符
and
资
share
格
with
的这些工程
stakeholders
的时
to
候，
allow time for changes to project
那
design
我们应该就
or
是有
use
给
of
更多的时
alternative
间，就是说
sites.
去有调整修
In my
改。
prior work, I have read
我之前
many
的一些工作里面，我看到
project alternatives
我知道有
analysis.
很多
I
不
have
同的
never
调整，
seen
一
a
些工程的
single
调整里面没有
project
看到，
alternatives analysis
我没有
that
看到
chose
任
a
何的
project alternative.
任
There
何
are
的在
always
评估的过程里面
justifications
会
for
鼓
why
励
there
这
is
些
no
的工程
alternative to
会
this
选
project.
择
The number one
其
being
他的
that
选
these
项，
energy developments are driven by
但
private landowners with
因为这
private
些很
capital.
多的这
It
些
is the private capital
工程的
itself
公
that
司
is
哈，他们就
driving
是想
our
要，
renewable energy transition.
他
And
们
so
希
if
望
it's a
得到
private
更多的就
landowner
是那些
or a
能
private
源，
developer
或者是
that
一些
is putting
个人
forth
私
this
人的发展
proposal,
商，
they do not have an alternative project site to
他
what they
们
are
没有
proposing.
就是其
And
他的
so
选
these
项的
project
一些选
alternatives
址，
never exist.
所以
They
这些
simply don't
另类
exist.
的选址或者
I did read
工程的方式
980
哈，
CMR a little
都
bit
没有
this
从来没
morning,
有发生
and
过。
it said if energy reduction
如果这种
was
能源
an
减少，
alternative to the proposed energy
如果
production
我们提出了就另类选
project.
项的话，
And my question is
我
this
的
energy
问题是，
reduction going to be taken seriously on a statewide scale
就
in
如果我们
assessment
这种就
of
是
these
能源
project
减少的
individual
这整个
project
州来讲，
alternatives? We
我
have the
们就
ability
是
now to reduce our energy consumption.
我
And we
们
are
可以
making
其实有
strides
一
in
些的
energy
能
efficiency
力哈，就是
statewide.
减少这种
However,
能
it
源
is
的
simply not
消耗。
enough with the potential for
我们其
data
实可以
centers
有
coming
可
on
能
board.
性，
I mean,
我
when
们
you go to
州可
downtown
以，
Boston, it looks like a circus at night. It's lit up with all kinds of
其
electricity
实我们
all
看
night
到
long.
很多
We're
的
not
地方
making
就过分
serious
使用
and
能源。
impactful
如果我们到
reductions in our
Boston 有
usage
些
of
地方，我
energy.
们看到
And
就
yet,
是很
what
多的
types
能
of
源在晚
energy
上在使
reduction
用，
are
其实
going to be
根本不需
included
要的。
in
我们是消耗
individual
了过多的能
assessments
源。
as alternatives to these
所以其实
individual
我们可以
projects?
看的就是说，我们
My
不需要
final
消耗这
comments
么
in
多
regard to
能
site
源来减
suitability
少
have
使
to
用
do
能
with
源。
water.
好，另外就是讲到好像水，
As I stated, we have a
就好
sole
像我
source
讲，
aquifer.
我们有用这
The
些资源用的
EEA
太多。
does not do enough in terms
我觉
of
得我
water
们在
protection.
这个审批的过程没
There
有
is
做得
much
够。
more that could be included here.
我们今天应该提供就是
Paragraph 2
更多
states
的选项，
local
更多思
controls
考的。
must be in the form of zoning or general bylaws or
我们
ordinances
应该
or
提供
health
更多的
regulations
律法
that
条
meet the
例。
requirements of 310 CMR 22. EEA is missing all of the communities
EEA 其
that
实真的
rely
是
on private
没有，
drinking
真的
water
是
wells
没有
that
看到
do
很
not
多的
have
这
a
种
public
社
water
区，这
supply.
种个人的
By
私人
simply
的。
protecting our Zone 1
其
and
实我
Zone
们真的
2
应该保
wellhead
护更多
protection
这些
areas,
的区
we are
域。
leaving out all of the private well owners in Massachusetts.
我们真的没有看到更多
Many,
个
many
人社
small
区的
towns,
利益，
including Carver,
好像一些小的一些社区哈，保护他们的水源。
This oversight needs to be corrected.
这种过度的这种选址哈，我们今天应该要看到，我们真的是要更多的保护到一些饮用水源的资源。我们知道我们在我们的州哈，我们没有州政府或者是联邦政府的保护，没有真是公众的，就是那种水源的那个基建。 我们真正更多的评估这些的需要。我们今天讲到就是社区的影响，我们不需要全部把这些问题解答今天晚上，但是我们真的要思考到，就是这些选址真的是更适合我们整个社区生境环态的那个生态的发展。 我们就是有这些原因要思考，我们希望 EFSB 能够真的思考更多哈，谢谢。
Thank you, Ms. Harrelson.
好，谢谢你。我相信就是有其中另外一个人在现场，他想要表达意见。
Good evening, Commissioner.
晚安
everyone.
大家好。
Okay.
It's easier for our stenographer if you're near him.
你可以走进来一点哈，因为那个文书可以就是记录哈。
Right. Good evening. Evan.
好，大家好。好
，EDAN of Marion, Massachusetts.
Marion 就是麻省的部门的人委员。
So thank you. I'll keep my comments short. I just
我只想要简短。
Thanking Governor Healy, Secretary Tepper, the legislature for bringing this effort forward. I also know it's a great deal of work and a tremendous undertaking. So we're all very grateful for that.
我们都很
my company's perspective and from my perspective personally. I'd like to just underscore how difficult I think this is. Finding common standards and conditions for projects that vary widely in scale and scope and technology is very difficult. And I just sort of offer to the EFSB and have done so to the DOER as well, that we should just be very careful that this very important process and well-intentioned process doesn't ultimately end up creating more red tape and taking longer and providing greater impediments to renewable deployment than we have today. Certainly, we at Rewild...
Excuse me, this is the interpreter. Could I ask you to speak up a little bit louder, please?
Sure, sorry.
No worries, thank you.
Certainly we at Rewild and many in the development community, most in the development community, have taken the siting parameters that the state has put forward, the DOER through the SMART regulations, the ongoing siting and permitting reform process very seriously. We focus on previously developed land. We try and very responsibly site our projects and work with communities in which we're a part. In the course of this process, I think there are some concerns, and I'll work to lay these out in writing later, but I think there are some concerns that well-intentioned standard conditions and requirements may actually be a bit out of scope for, say, a 5-megawatt solar project. And we should just be very careful as we consider all of these things. Are we taking a smaller scale project into account when we're putting these forward? Because it may render the process moot or worse for some small project development. So thank you very much and appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else present here that would like to provide any additional comments? Is there anyone online that would like to provide additional comments? If so, please raise your hand and we will move you into the panel. So for tonight, we were scheduled between 6 and 9 p.m. Because of that time frame, we are going to take an additional break in case there's any additional commenters that would like to provide comment and have not been able to attend. Therefore, we are going to go off the record at this time. We'll go back on the record at 8 o'clock and take any additional comments at that time. We do appreciate you guys coming out and providing your comments in person, as well as all those online. Again, we're going to take a break now. Time is now 7:50. We'll be returning at 8 p.m.
Thank you. How many, I was in your public hearing for, I think I caught probably 3/4 of it. Good. I'm glad because I think a lot of people join it are going to the stages where so easy to do it. Not people are starting to see the and this is probably not necessarily figure their stuff coordinated.
We'll have the DOER's regional coordinator representative. It's a great team. We'll just keep plowing forward. So, yeah, glad to see it all come together.
Virtually too.
Your con. Hi, Jonah.
Great to meet you.
Yeah, that's like. It is. Yeah.
At this time, we'll go back on the record in EFSB 2510. After taking a 15-minute break, I will now call on, are there any additional comments, either in person or online, regarding the EFSB regulations and DPU? Again, if you're online, please raise your hand and we'll move you into the panel if you'd like to provide any oral comments this evening. Can we go to the next slide? No.
Kessel, this is Wayne. Can you go to the slide with the next public comment hearing?
Thank you. So thank you for your comments and questions. We welcome written comments so that they may be considered fully. These comments are due to us by Friday, November 7th, 2025. We will be posting a video of this public comment hearing online. You may also find the slide presentation on the Siting Board and department web pages in the notice and at the welcome desk. The next public comment hearing will be held on Wednesday, October 29th in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Again, please check the schedule and we look forward to seeing you there. Additionally, you may be able to provide, next slide, we may be able to provide written comments regarding EFSB 2510 sent to DPU efiling@mass.gov and citingboard.filing@mass.gov. Again, the deadline for written comments is November 7th, 2025, so that they may be considered as part of the regulations. We appreciate you coming out this evening. We look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. At this time, we'll go off the record in 2510 and DPU 2575.